Hello, welcome to Drawing Basics Part 2. But this time we're going to be using a blue ballpoint pen. The whole point of the blue ballpoint pen is to show you, and anyone you want to show off to as well, that you can make a cool shaded image with anything. So this is going to be the same as last time. I'm going to draw a basic circle, again with the fragile tape. I'm going to turn this into a lovely three-dimensional ball. One of the best things about using a pen to do shading is that you have to accept all the mistakes you might possibly make. But since this is a very John Rossi kind of way of doing things, what you do is you go, it's not a mistake, it's a happy little accident. You can make this thing, perfect in your own way. Then I'm going to start with crosshatching. As I said in the last video, and if you haven't watched, please go back and do so, is that hatching is a pretty versatile tool and you can use it with all sorts of dry media. By dry media I mean anything that isn't like paint or or anything like that. Charcoal, pencil, normal pens, felt tips, you name it, you can use it crosshatching with it. And it's just a series of lines, so easy, so effective. I once saw an artist use this technique to amuse a random Canadian we picked up. We were out in the pub with a whole bunch of us just sitting there, and one of our more erstwhile colleagues brought in this Canadian they picked up at an exhibition. And when I say picked up, I don't mean like, they chatted to them and thought they were fanciful, etc, etc. It was just a random person started talking to them who followed them around. Now this guy was constantly asking weird questions, which is nice. It was nice to meet him and all, but we weren't expecting to have a Canadian come and play with us that particular day. So this one guy started drawing a picture of a couple who were sitting across from us, and just a simple line drawing, and the Canadian was asking questions the whole time. So the guy said, well, you get out a pen and paper as well, and I can show you this technique that will help you give depth to any of your pictures. And it works particularly well with cheap blue ballpoint pens. Now the Canadian was obviously unimpressed by this, didn't believe him, etc, etc. But as they both sat there doing their crosshatching, my artist friend making this amazing, detailed, full of depth sketch of this couple across the way, the Canadian's mind started to change and he started to do the same thing. Didn't get the hang first off, but then no one gets the hang of everything first off. And that occupied him for a solid hour. Admittedly, we ended up having to ditch him then because we'd been with him for hours and he wasn't getting the hint that we all had to go home and what have you. But but that shows you can do these sketches anywhere with whatever materials you've got on you. If you've got a pen and paper on you, you can do some live sketching. You can see here that I haven't bothered to worry about keeping in the lines, and that just makes it more to me it makes it more aesthetically pleasing because it's actually a real live object for me. You can see here I'm doing throw with these lines and just building up layers again. What was I going to say? I was going to say something really clever and have you, but one of those things that's actually quite therapeutic, I find, because as you build up the layers, you see, you can build up so many layers and go over it so many times, and it just makes it more and more real. I really love this. I mean, you're not going to necessarily make, you see on YouTube and you see on videos, it's like, oh my god, this guy who can make a photographic looking picture of X celebrity, and yeah, you can do that with this. You can really easily do that with this, especially if you do it on a massive like A0 piece of paper, which is basically the size you can stretch your arms out to, what have you, So, you know, you've got a huge face on this huge piece of paper. Yeah, you can get some amazing detail that way. And all power to them. But as I said in my previous video, if you want a photograph of something, you photograph the thing. But, you know, they've got great skills and they've obviously practiced for a hell of a long time to do it. So, you know, you've got to admire them, but that's just not the way I do things. But, you know, if that's the way you want to go with this, then knock yourself out, enjoy. Because as I have said, and as I will keep saying, this is about you enjoying yourself and having a bit of time. And it's also quite nice if you're feeling anxious, you can just sort of immerse yourself in this sort of thing, and go for it. I'm putting a little light shading down here just to make it look as if it's on a more solid surface, just so it doesn't look like it's floating in the air. If you want balls floating in the air, float those balls, but then obviously you don't put a shading at the bottom there, or you might put shading that's not actually connected to the object. It's entirely up to you, and this is good for, again, you know, you can use this technique to make shading on all sorts of things, even if you're doing a bit of colouring in. Even if you're doing a bit of colouring in, you can actually use these techniques to add a bit of depth and texture to things. So, you know, if you're colouring, say, an Alice in Wonderland colouring book, and you want your, you want your Mad March hare to look as if he's, you know, slightly three-dimensional, or if he's in the background or the foreground, make him pop a little bit. Adding a bit of shading can do that for you. I will admit that it's not necessarily the tidiest thing to do, because the cheaper the pen, the more likely it is for the colour to rub off on your hands. But since sort of her likes it getting messy when I'm doing art, it doesn't bother me. But if you do worry about it, you can always get one of those gloves that just consists of a pinky finger and a ring finger. They're quite handy. They're also quite good if you do digital art and stuff like that. I'm going to speed up this next bit to just move things along a bit. See here, it's nice and dark at the bottom there, and I think it's gone fairly well. You know, it's a fairly round looking ball. Probably spend more time on it and make it a little bit more detailed, but frankly life is short. And yeah, no, I think that's pretty cool. Yep, that's pretty done now, and we go on to the next bit. Let's clear this page away and see what we're doing next with that blue pen. Starting again with our trusty circular friend here. So basically these videos are all balls, for want of a better word. So what am I doing here? We're going to be scribbling again. Or did we scribble before? I remember if we scribbled before, or that was a different video. Oh, that may be a future video that involves more scribbling. But this will be fun anyway, because it's pretty free form and you can go at it any way you like. I quite often use this sort of technique to make little characters in books. So rather than drawing an outline for a creature or whatever, I just do scribbles in the sort of building up a shape that's already almost three-dimensional and has a weirdness to it. So, you know, if you're doing a bit of Tim Burton-y stuff, it doesn't actually look like Tim Burton stuff. Or if you're trying to draw, I don't know, a cool animal or something like that, it's quite a nice technique to give it a bit more movement to it. You can hear that I'm not putting the light in the place I have been doing the last three pictures. So I've been imagining the light's coming from the top right-hand corner. But this time I've decided it's going to be straight down on this one. Unless, of course, it changes during the process. So it's an overhead light here. So you've got all the shading at the bottom. And yeah, it's just basically sort of doing that. I mean, if you want to make it look like it's lit from the bottom, that's quite cool as well. But it's it's a bit harder to do that and still make it look like it's attached to the ground. So that's a better one for if you are, as I said earlier, floating your ball or floating whatever. That one works quite well for that. It also tends to make things a bit spookier looking because it's unusual for things to be lit from below. You know, like when you're doing Halloween and you've got your torch under your face and all looks different. The other thing you can do with this technique that's quite fun is challenge yourself not to take your pen off the paper. So basically doing a drawing without ever taking your pen or your pencil off the paper is quite a nice way of doing it, and it's quite relaxed because you loosen up your wrist and, you know, just get into it. As you can probably tell, I really love using this technique because it's just so not precious. You don't have to worry about it being good. Well, maybe good's not the right word, but you don't have to worry about it being perfect because you're just using a cheap pen on cheap copy paper. And you can make something really nice. So I'm going to get ready for my next drawing, and I will see you next time. I hope you enjoyed that, and if you did, you know the drill. Like, share, subscribe, the usual. Anyway, hopefully see you next time. So goodbye and stay safe.